Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to the School of Personal Finance. In this video, we're going to talk about the best places to keep your emergency fund and also your short-term savings. All right, let's get to it. All right, so welcome. It's been a while since I posted and I'm trying to get back on the horse. So hopefully you will start seeing many more videos coming from me. So make sure to turn your alerts on so you get notified every time I post a new video. I also updated my website, schoolofpersonalfinance.com. Come over, check it out, hop on my email list. I'm sending out weekly newsletters now and just a bunch of free resources to help people master their personal finances. So when it comes to emergency funds and short-term savings, the first question that I always like to ask is, what is the right amount to keep in an emergency fund? What is the difference between your emergency fund and other short-term savings goals that you might have? So let's start with the first question. How much should you keep in an emergency fund? And it really depends on your situation, right? So like rules of thumb out there are 3 months your monthly expenses or 6 times your monthly expenses. And it really depends on what type of job you have, your stability, your overall financial situation. So everybody is different when it comes to this. And I always like to ask people, like, what would help you sleep better at night? How much money do you need to have in the bank in order to sleep well at night? So now, if you have a very steady job with a steady paycheck with very low probability of you losing your job, then I do think it's okay to have on the lower end of that 3 to 6 month range inside of an emergency fund. But if you're an entrepreneur, if you're self-employed, if your income is all over the place, if you are a single family income or a single person income where, maybe just one spouse is working and the other one stays at home, then I like to have closer to that 6-month liquidity, maybe even more than that, depending on the situation. So the bottom line is it's different for everybody and you have to do what really makes you feel comfortable. But with that said, if you have a lot of credit card debt, if you have bad debt out there, then you really need to get out of that first. So you're only going to want to keep a small amount in your emergency fund. On the other end of the spectrum, I see people keep way too much money in their emergency fund just because it helps them feel comfortable. But they're giving up a lot by doing that. Maybe they're not taking full advantage of retirement accounts that are available to them because they want to keep all of this cash on hand. So there's a lot of factors that go into how much you should keep in an emergency fund. So where are the best places to keep an emergency fund right now? Short-term rates are very good. We are in this weird environment where we have an inverted yield curve. And what that means is that short-term interest rates are higher than long-term interest rates. And it's usually not that way. And when it is, it's usually a precursor to a recession. But it just hasn't happened yet. That's why people have been saying, there is a recession looming because we've had this inverted yield curve for a long time now. But for example, a 6-month Treasury issued by the US government is paying over 5.5% right now, where a 10-year Treasury is at around 4.75%. So it typically is not that way. Usually you get a higher yield, you get a higher return if you are willing to lock up your money for a longer period of time. But right now, the short end of the curve is giving you a better yield. So as far as emergency funds go, this is the first time in a very long time that you actually could get a good rate of return on your savings account. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you are not just pissing money away by keeping a chunk of it at one of the big banks that's paying you like 0.01%. And you know the names, right? It's Wells, Bank of America, Citi, Chase. All of them pay basically nothing on their savings accounts. So you should not keep any significant amount of money in there. Especially now with all these online banks that are still FDIC insured, where it's so simple to just move money. It's just a few clicks of the button to move money from those savings accounts back into your checking account at Wells or Bank of America or Chase or wherever you keep your checking account if that's where you want it to be. So there's no excuse anymore. You're much better off keeping it in one of these FDIC insured online banks. So let me show you a few examples. Now, none of this is financial advice. I don't know anything about you, right? I'm just going to show you some examples of some banks that I know are paying pretty good interest rates. All right. So if we look at the first one, this is the one that I personally use, and this is Wealthfront. So currently 4.8% right now, and it's FDIC insured. They actually also offer you a 50 basis points bump for 3 months if you were referred by somebody. And then you could get more 3-month bumps if you refer other people to Wealthfront. But their baseline interest rate right now is 4.8, which is great. Another one that's out there is CIT Bank. This is 4.65 that they're paying on current savings accounts. Betterment is another popular one, 4.75 that they're paying on there right now. And then Capital One 360 is at 4.3%. So now one thing I love about Wealthfront, I'm not terribly familiar with CIT. Capital One, I believe, does this also, but it might look a little bit different. But with Wealthfront, you could have one account, and then within that account, you could have buckets. So you could like label like emergency funds and keep 30 grand in there. And then you could have like, I have one called sinking funds, which is for my car insurance, my homeowner's insurance, for bills that are only once or twice a year, and I label that differently. So I have like goal buckets, right? So like vacation goal. So maybe I have $5,000 in my vacation bucket, and I try to fund that for the year. So even though you only have one account, you could have like these sub accounts underneath it where it's very simple and it's broken out and the app is beautiful. So I'm a fan of using that. I'm kind of turning this into a Wealthfront commercial, but it's not sponsored by them or anything like that. I just personally use it. So I love the idea of having those different little buckets where you can see how much money you have in all of these little different goals, while keeping my emergency fund kind of separate from that. I believe Capital One has something similar, but I just don't have experience with using it if it's exactly the same as how Wealthfront is. So now once we move beyond savings and money market accounts, the next step might be like a CD, a certificate of deposit. Now with CDs, you really have to shop around, and the rates are changing all the time depending on the banks and if they want to raise deposits or not, right? They'll come out with promo rates, so you really have to be looking out for it. But the rates, they're very similar to like short-term savings accounts. So I'm not doing much in CDs these days, unless you want to lock the rate in. Like with savings and money market accounts, the rates could change at any time. So if the Fed starts reducing rates, you'll start to see those rates come down. But as far as CDs, if you do a one-year CD, then you are locked into that certificate of deposit. You get that rate guaranteed for the 1 year. CDs also will have penalties if you want to break it early, if you need money, if you need access to that money before the term is over, then depending on the bank, they're going to have some kind of penalty. Maybe it's the last 3 months of interest. But you want to understand exactly how that works. Now, some banks offer these penalty-free CDs where you could take money from it and not have a penalty, but I really haven't found any that pay a higher rate than Wealthfront or CIT Bank or Betterment. So I'd rather just have my money in those liquid accounts personally, but it really depends on you and if you want to try to lock in the rate for a year or so. Beyond CDs, then Treasuries, right? So the government issues 6-month Treasury bills, 1-year Treasuries, and the 6-month rate, like I mentioned before, is over 5.5% right now. I just Googled it. So as of today, 5.57 on a 6-month Treasury, which is great. If you want to lock in for 3 years, they're 4.8% right now. So there are some attractive rates out there for these short-term treasuries. So for example, if you know that you have a chunk of money that you're saving for a down payment on the house, and that is maybe a year away, 2 years away, what I'm personally doing is I'm using 6-month treasuries and then seeing where the rates are 6 months from now. But if you just wanted to lock in and you wanted to buy a 1-year or a 2-year treasury, the rates are they're pretty good right now. And with treasuries, they are also state income tax free. So like I live in New York, so that's important to me to be able to have the interest on it state tax free. You will pay federal tax on it, but having the state tax free is nice. So as we kind of layer these things, right, we have money market and savings accounts, the most liquid, right, the easiest to access. Then we have CDs where you're going to lock it in for a certain period of time. Then we have these treasuries. And with treasuries, you could buy them directly from the U.S. Treasury, treasurydirect.org. The website sucks. It's hard to navigate. So like I do it in a brokerage account like Charles Schwab makes it very easy. Fidelity, you could do it through. And it's just very simple to go in and buy these treasuries, and it's a great place to keep your short-term cash. And there are other options out there that I'm not going to get into in this video, but things like brokered CDs where you could go onto your broker, so Schwab or Fidelity or whoever you use, and buy brokered CDs. You just want to understand exactly how those work because there are some nuances to them. Also, individual municipal bonds. So if you're in a high tax bracket, you could buy a muni bond where the interest is going to be federal and state tax free. So you want to see what the equivalent yield is for your tax bracket when making those decisions. And then another one could be a corporate bond. So you could buy junk bonds, right, with a corporation that maybe doesn't have the best credit rating where you'll get a much higher rate of return, but obviously there is risk with that. or you could buy corporate bonds from big companies that you know the names of. So things like Home Depot or IBM, where you could get a higher rate of return than you would on Treasuries. But of course, that comes with more risk, because if that company happens to go bankrupt or if they can't make good on their obligations, then you could get left holding the bag with those corporate bonds as well. So you just want to be careful when doing that. Government bonds are considered to be a risk-free asset, right? Because our government can basically just print more money if they need to make payments on those bonds. So we'll see how long that lasts with all the debt that this country is in right now. But I wanted to keep it at this for my first video back. It feels good to get back in front of the camera, get back on the horse. I hope that you found this one helpful. Please make sure to check out schoolofpersonalfinance.com. I'm showing different ways that you could work with me on there. Sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to be sending out weekly newsletters and resources, PDFs, just things to help you become great with your money and master your personal finances. So it's good to see everybody. Please leave me a comment down below. Let me know that you saw this one. Let me know if you have any questions. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you again in the next one. Thanks.